Christy, and thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. So today we want to talk about standards-based online tools to help our newcomers and our beginning English learners. And I wanted to kick it off by just giving you a little bit of background about myself and my co-presenter, David Noyes. Language Tree Online, we've been around for a long time, since 2003, and we've always been very focused on language acquisition. We've spent the past 4 to 5 years solely focused on English language development for secondary students, primarily because we just saw a great need for these students. They have a short ramp before graduation, and our hearts really go out to these students. So we've really just been solely focused on that. And David, a little bit about David, he has his national boards in ELD, and he is the EL coach for K-12 for Long Beach Unified School District, which is one of the largest districts here in Southern California. And David is also an award-winning curriculum writer, and he's the head of our curriculum. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We wanted to give you a little bit of insight or background as it connects to our ELD Level 1. A lot of the research that we began with was just really looking at the influx of newcomers and our emerging or beginning level students that were entering the secondary schools across the United States. A lot of students coming from war-torn countries, just really across the world that we were getting in our schools. And we realized as we started to kind of look at the resources that we had, that it was pretty limited in secondary schools. And one of those things, especially around foundational literacy skills, a lot of the foundational literacy skills in English are taught in the elementary school venue, but we have students that are coming into secondary education without that foundation. So we, one of our big drivers for our ELD Level 1 was to look at really providing succinct foundational literacy skills lessons. Additionally, we realized that the acculturation process was particularly rigorous for our secondary students because they had to adapt not only to a new school setting, but also the culture of middle and high school that is sometimes vastly different than the world that they left behind. And just kind of moving on, we also looked at summative informative data around language development, specifically around language development. And what we found was we have summative data that happens annually, but very little of that data is trickled down to the teacher in order to make instructional decisions and supports that really meet the needs of our students that are still acquiring the English language. And lastly, culturally responsive pedagogy. We realize that many of the resources that are out there often lack some of that culturally responsive pedagogy, creating those windows, creating those mirrors where students actually see themselves in the curriculum. And that was, again, another driver around our ELD Level 1. So one of the things that we like to kind of invite our experts in the room, so to speak, and we just wanted to get a little bit of feedback from you, if we can, just around formative and summative assessments for secondary English learners that are at your school site or in your district, in your state, that you might utilize just to kind of give us a pulse on where you're at with some of this stuff. So feel free to go ahead and put that in the comments section or the chat, if you will. If you are just kind of along for the ride and taking all this in, we understand that, but we do, want to invite your voice and your expertise into the room.
Okay, I'm gonna just keep moving along here, but if some input is in the chat, feel free to interrupt me and let me know. I'm going to move on to the next slide and just talk a little bit about how we went about creating the entry and exit assessments. So the name kind of says it all, but what we did is we put it into kind of three functional areas, or I like to call them buckets: foundational literacy skills, collaborative listening and speaking, and then language, function, and construction. So in each one of these bucket areas, what we did is we put 25 questions. The unique part is that we only put one ELD standard per question, but we have more than one question with that standard. The reason that we did that is that that allows educators, after their students go through these three bucket areas, it allows you to go in and actually see where they fell out or where those skill gaps reside. Really, it helps to, pinpoint their areas of need. So all in, it's very thorough. It's 75 questions. Again, we don't want students to sit down and do a 75 question assessment, but it's all online, so they can start, in foundational literacy skills, go up to whatever number, let's say 10, and then next time they log in, they'll pick up right where they left off. So of course, the entry assessment is really to gauge where they're at and where they need help. And then, of course, the exit assessment would be at the very end, after they go through all the online curriculum. You take advantage of the downloadable content. And then the exit assessment is set up the exact same way. The questions are not exactly the same, but they're very similar, and we're assessing the same skills. And that is really to help you gauge growth.
And Jen, I'm sorry, could you just reference the backwards planning process with the standards that we utilized, the WIDA, the California, and the TEA, among others?
Yeah, no, thanks, David. Yeah, so basically one of the things, and David could probably speak to this better than I can because he's the mastermind behind it all, but essentially we looked at the ELD standards across the United States. So we looked at the New York standards, TEKS in Texas, ELPA 21, WIDA, and based on all the ELD standards, then we took a real granular approach, and we ended up going with the California ELD standards only because they were the most detailed or the most granular. I don't know if there's anything you want to elaborate on there, David, but
No, just, the assessment was a backwards planning process where the standards were the drivers. So we were really careful about addressing each of the standards, and again, talking about the aspect of granular, then each nuance of the standard, because within the context of many of our language standards, there are several parts. So we made sure to address that in both the entry and exit assessments, as well as the lessons themselves.
Great, thanks, David. Yes, so the standards-based assessment then corresponds to the standards-based lessons. And so you'll see those same, three buckets: the foundational literacy skills, collaborative listening and speaking, and language, function, and construction. And we really have a uniform teaching style in the sense that the lesson input is given by the virtual professor. It's video-based. The students can go and watch the input as many times as they need to. And then from there, they go through their activities. And we try to make the activities very different and unique, so they're not, so they don't all look and feel the same way to gauge, a student's interest. And then for each online lesson, there's equivalent number of downloadable lessons. And the downloadable lessons really are just proven classroom activities. They're designed for small group instruction. Only teachers with their logins have access to the downloadable content. Then you can see on the right-hand side here what lessons are covered in level 1 for foundational literacy skills. And then you can see, I know it's tiny writing, but collaborative listening and speaking, there's 12 lessons. And then language, function, and construction, there's 7 lessons. In addition to the standards-based assessments and lessons, we do have a section in our ELD Level 1. I like to say, just think of it completely separate of, the standards and everything, is our American School Culture module. And really this module was designed to help our newcomer students, just to help them feel comfortable in their new country, in their new culture, in their new school environment, their new language. And so what we did is we broke it up into 6 chapters, and we tried to expose them to as much as they may be exposed to with our school environment. So each chapter covers a topic area. You can see their school day and school rules, the importance of class participation, school resources, where to go to get help, American holidays and traditions, extracurricular activities, and so on. But how this works, it's similar in structure in the sense that there's the video input, and then from there they move into their practice exercises. And because it's geared towards newcomer students, the questions are very straightforward, yes, no type questions. And for American School Culture, the video content, they can select either English or Spanish. And for each online lesson, there are downloadable activities. And I'll turn it back over to you, David.
Absolutely. So today we're talking about that ELD Level 1, which is for our newcomers or our emergent bilinguals that are entering the U.S. school system. But we also, we were visionary, and as students matriculated into across the language level. So I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about our ELD Level 2, because students need, as they matriculate out of that ELD Level 1 beginning level, we also recognize that we have students that are long-term English learners, and really just on that cusp of redesignation, language redesignation. So a couple of the differences in ELD Level 1, which you're going to see today, is that it's designed for our students that are newcomers up to about 2 years in the country. We used highly scaffolded lessons that include the virtual professor, multisensory input, video, audio, as well as an opportunity for students to focus on topics that they're familiar with. So a lot of that might have to do with some functional vocabulary, as well as just we used a lot of topics around school, around integrating into the middle and high school environment. Both the ELD Level 1 and ELD Level 2 have online interactive exercises. We have the American School Culture component built into Level 1 for those newcomers that need that, to acclimate, acculturation, and then the downloadable activities. In ELD Level 2, one of the big differences is the standards are much more rigorous in ELD Level 2, because we're integrating subject matter. So although language is the driver in each of these lessons, we have content as the passenger, and that might be connecting some of the new generation science standards, math concepts, social studies, a lot of different content integration. One difference in the ELD Level 2 is the online exercises are digital. So they also have opportunities for more oral production practice, fluency reading and recording. That's just about it, just giving you some insight into Level 1 and matriculation into Level 2. So one of the things that we wanted to just kind of show you the difference in ELD Level 2, this is kind of the content connection that we're in collaborative listening and speaking, or we're talking about modes of language. You'll notice that one of the rigorous science concepts around photosynthesis. And again, I wanted to just make clear that language is the driver here. We're assessing language, but we're integrating the content. So we want to make sure that students understand that language lives in every one of the content areas. And we want to give them the opportunity to unpack that.
Great, thanks, David. One last slide here, and then I want to take you in and show you the program firsthand. But we talked a little bit about the fact that whether it's the Level 1 or the Level 2 program, there is the online lessons, and then for every online lesson there are downloadable activities. So, and that's accessed by the teacher. But for Level 2, it's a little bit different from the perspective of The teacher has access to the downloadables, but they're short. They're more of a warm up and modeling. And then from there, they send the students back into the program. And for every online lesson, there's a practice assignment, again, reinforcing that particular skill. So this slide just kind of gives you a short screenshot of some examples, like in foundational literacy skills. Here we give them some clues. Then they have to type the word in. They're typing right into the program. Then they use that word in a sentence. For collaborative listening and speaking, they're looking at the image and then typing in descriptive words to describe the image. So I'm going to just pause for a second to see if anybody has any questions or anything. If not, then I'm going to go and log into the program.
Hi, Jennifer. It doesn't look like there's any questions right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. All righty, so let me log in. I have a teacher demo login account. One thing to point out, whether you have a teacher login credential or a student login credential, you see the exact same thing. So there's not a different view for a teacher versus a different view for a student. Everything's the same. The only thing that is different is a teacher has access to reporting and a teacher has access to downloadables. Besides that, though, everything is identical. So I'm just going to kind of, jump around here and go through it like we did in the presentation. So let's first look at the ELD Level 1 entry assessment. So we'll click on that. And you'll see the 3 buckets that I've been talking about. The foundational literacy skills with 25 assessment questions, collaborative listening and speaking with 25 assessment questions, and then language function and construction with 25 assessment questions. So I'm going to just click on one, and I've been in here a lot, so I'm going to bounce around a little and just give you an idea of what an assessment question is like in this language function and construction area.
Look at the picture and listen to this sentence. Angela went to the library to check out a book. Which word below can be used to replace the name Angela? She, he, it, they.
So you can see in level 1, it's highly scaffolded. They have, the text and the audio support and the image. And then I'm going to just go to the next assessment question. So this kind of just shows you the concept of we put a single standard per question, but we have more than one question with that standard. So here's another question on assessing knowledge of pronouns.
Look at the picture and listen to the sentence. John likes to eat ice cream after school. Which word below can be used to replace the name John?
So again, they can read or listen to their options and then move on to the next. So I'm going to go back to home, pull up my menu here. So we looked briefly at the level 1 entry assessment area. Now let's go into the level 1 lesson modules. So once again, it's those same 3 buckets. They correspond to the assessment, but let's click on foundational literacy skills to start. And you can see here in foundational literacy skills, there's a total of 9 lessons. And so students would start with lesson number 1, and they would need to get 80% or higher to move on to lesson 2. If they, get below that, they'll have to keep retaking that lesson until they can achieve 80% or greater. Then collaborative listening and speaking. This bucket area has a total of 12 lessons. And again, they would start with lesson 1 and have to get 80% or higher. And then lastly, we'll go to language function and construction. And I'm going to show you what a lesson looks like in this section, because we looked at a couple of assessment questions in the entry assessment of language function and construction where we were assessing their knowledge of pronouns. So you can see here, lesson 2 is about pronouns and connecting words. So let me start it at the beginning here.
In this lesson, we will learn about personal pronouns and how they are used in reading and writing. Let's review. A personal pronoun can refer to a person, place, thing, or idea. Here's an example. The boy walks to school. He walks to school. The pronoun he is used to rename the noun boy. Here's another example. The dish is in the sink. It is in the sink. The pronoun it refers to the dish in the sink. One more rule about personal pronouns. They can be masculine, feminine, or neither. When the noun refers to a place, thing, or idea, we use it. The pronoun it is neither masculine nor feminine.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of, how a lesson begins with the virtual professor. And as I mentioned before, they can watch it as many times as they would like to, the video. And then from there, it goes into, like this one in particular, we have a T chart with the noun and then the applicable pronoun on the right, and then their instructions.
Look at the pictures below. Choose the correct pronoun.
So then based on the image, they will select the appropriate pronoun. And then from here, we have more lesson input. So we'll watch a little bit more.
Now let's learn a few more pronouns. They are I, we, and they. The pronoun I is used when you are referring to yourself. For example, I like to read. The next two pronouns are plural as they refer to more than one person. The pronoun we is used when you are referring to yourself and others. For example, we walk to school. The pronoun they is used when you are referring to a group or more than one, but you are not in that group. For example, they are dancing.
Okay, so then from there, they'll go and continue on with the lesson. For the sake of time, I'm gonna go back to home so I can show you a few other things. So let's talk about reporting for a second. So after, students go through all three of the entry assessment areas, then you can go in and select entry assessment and grades and really have a look at how your students did. So this is unfortunately not, it's not real student data, but it's demo data. But let's just focus on language student 2, for example. So you can see the 3 assessment areas: foundational literacy skills, collaborative listening and speaking, language function and construction. You can see how they did in each area. And this little magnifying glass, you can click and it gives you good detail. You can see the questions they got right and wrong. You can see how long they were in the program. So they were in there for 3 minutes, and probably why they didn't do so well. But then you can scroll down and actually see where the student fell out. So, like question 3, it gives you a lot of good insight. And really our rule of thumb is for students, when they take these 3 assessment areas, anything that's 90% or below, we would suggest that they do that equivalent lesson module just to really hone in and reinforce those skills and have some mastery. So that's kind of our rule of thumb. And for the lesson modules, the same thing. If you want to look at how they're progressing in the lesson modules, you would just select lesson modules and grades like I did before. Couple other things to show you. The downloadables. So, as we mentioned, for every online lesson, there's an equivalent downloadable. I'm going to select the language function and construction bucket because we looked at a bit of a lesson on the pronouns. So we'll click on that. And then the downloadable activities come up. And we really tried hard to put everything here so teachers didn't have to source anything. You know, it starts with the instructional routine. It's highly scaffolded. We have all the picture cards, everything that is here. And I'm sorry to scroll fast. Hopefully I don't make anybody dizzy, but then it goes all the way down to where there's writing exercises. You can see here we have a word bank and then images. And then based on the images, they're writing sentences. So let me go back. And then the ELD1 exit assessment. Once again, it's those same 3 buckets, 25 questions in each area. Set up exactly the same way. And then the last, and we've got just a couple minutes left, but the last piece real quick is the American School Culture module. And again, just to reiterate, it's really designed for our newcomer students and primarily to help them gain functional vocabulary and help them become more comfortable in their new environment. So you can see the video, they can select either English or Spanish. Then there's the interactive piece. And then we have what we call Vocabulary Builder, which also has video input and interactive exercises. Again, it's just scaffolded vocabulary to help them increase their vocabulary. So you can see chapter 2 is class participation, school resources, morning break and lunch, our holidays and traditions, and lastly, extracurricular activities. And at the bottom of American School Culture, you can see here it's hidden from students, but teachers have access to the downloadables. So for every online chapter, there's downloadable activities. And I think we've got a quick minute here. I'll just show you a little bit of one so you can get a feel for what school culture is like.
Hi, I'm Mike, and these are my friends Jessica, Jake, Layla, and Diego. We know you're new to school in America, so we'd like to take this time to show you around and explain a few things.
Unless your school requires that you wear a uniform, you can wear what you like. But there is a school dress code, and here are some examples. Shorts, skirts, and dresses must be long enough to reach the end of your fingertips. Avoid wearing any see-through clothing that exposes your undergarments. No tank tops or spaghetti straps. Shirts must have sleeves that go past the shoulders. No bare midriff. No hats or dark glasses in the classroom.
Let's start with what you would do before school begins. During this time, you can catch up with friends and get ready for your first class.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing.
Are you guys gonna go to the dance this Friday?
Yeah, I think so.
Me too.
Sounds good. Many students put their books and lunch in their lockers and get just what is needed for classes that start before the first break. You'll get a chance to go to your locker again during the breaks to put back books you no longer need and get books for your next classes. If you don't have a locker, make sure your belongings stay zipped up in your backpack. When you hear the first bell, it's time to go to the first period. Your schedule may be different from your friends, but everyone will have 6 periods of classes each day. At the start of each school day, it's customary to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, and it's a long input video, but and then from there they would go into their interactive exercises and then move on to the vocabulary builder section. So I know we're out of time, but I wanted to just open it up to see if anybody has any questions or anything.
Hey, Jennifer, the first question I can take is, what is the cost, price per student or account? And just anyone, if you're looking for pricing or a quote, you can email, it's right on the screen now, info@studica.com, and they'll be able to get that information for you. The next question, what districts in Connecticut are you currently using this program with their English learners?
great question. I'll take that. I can't off the top of my head think of a district in Connecticut, to be honest with you. We have some districts in Florida, in Colorado, in California, in Tennessee. I'm just trying to think. I can't think of anybody in Connecticut.
Okay. And then the other question is, how do these language lessons benefit students in their other classes, like science or math or?
Well, I can kind of talk to that. One of the research that when we were piloting the program with districts, especially with level 2, level 1 is really based on just raising that level of foundational skills, functional vocabulary, and giving them access to some of the language functions that they are experiencing in their other classes. Our level 2 lessons, we've had some pretty amazing results around redesignation, because what we've done is we've made sure to amplify those language functions and skills through the program, but these students are seeing these language functions and skills and applying that to their content area classes. So we've been, especially since I work in Long Beach Unified, and we've been tracking our students' progress. Their grade point average has gone up. They are passing courses, and then they're redesignating. So we have a lot of kids that are redesignating more quickly, and we're really trying to address the long-term English learner status, where we've had kids that some of our kids have been in that intermediate or expanding level of language acquisition for 8 to 10 years. And so what we're seeing is some really great results around redesignation there, and just an overall competence in language. And that's one of the reasons why we looked at developing this program, is we want our language learners to have a fair shake when it comes to language. And so many of those gaps are accessible, and we're able to address those, but we have to do it strategically.
Okay, the next question is, a lot of my students don't have any language transfer skills. How could they use this program?
So I'm just going to speak in essentially I work with classroom teachers, so I'm teaching in the classrooms on a daily basis. So one of the ways we were able to use the language tree program for our newcomers is we started just by using the American school culture lessons and building some of that functional vocabulary. I know we ran out of time, so you weren't able to see some of that functional vocabulary building, but we basically, in addition to showing them how to kind of access the platform, we were building all that functional vocabulary. And we did that prior to actually moving them into any of the assessments. So just spend some time getting them to acclimate and building that vocabulary, and then moving into the assessments. And we just didn't throw the assessments at them. We started with foundational skills. And tried to and looked at the data there, and spent a lot of time kind of building those foundational skills, and then moving into some of the more rigorous lessons in collaborative listening and speaking, which is basically modes of language. Interpretive mode, productive mode, collaborative mode, and then also the language function and construction, where we're introducing aspects of English grammar to our students.
Great. The last question, and I apologize if I missed it through the presentation, but do you have any programs that are suitable for students that are kind of in between the two levels?
These are really good questions. And so essentially, because of, I'm going to just kind of address the elephant in the room. There's been some learning loss this year for all of our students, not just our English learners, but what we're suggesting with our students that we're not quite sure where they land is to start with the level 1, give them the level 1 assessment, because I'm pretty certain, based on the data we've been looking at, that there's going to be some gaps. And for example, the student might do really well in the foundational skills assessment, but they may have some gaps in language function and construction around text structure or parts of speech. cohesion. So we're really strongly suggesting that, if to start the students and assess them in level 1, and then provide them with the support they need in level 1 so they can move into that level 2 assessment and subsequently the connected lessons.
Great. That looks like it's probably the end of the questions. Let me just double check. Yep. So I just wanted to thank you, Jennifer and David, for that presentation. And just to thank everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time out. And just a reminder to please keep an eye out for that email. We'll send that in a day or two. And if you could just take a moment and take the survey at the end of the webinar, we would really appreciate it. So thank you so much and have a great day.